here's the other interesting thing. You know who likes a bunch of Antonio Brown's tweets? You know who Antonio Brown keeps retweeting?
Go on.
Daniel Baldwin. As in one of the Baldwin brothers. Like, really?
Listen, your friend was one of the Baldwin brothers. Does he retweet him too?
Maybe. But I was like, this is odd.
Everything about Antonio Brown is odd. There is nothing that he has done in the last maybe 18 months that is not odd.
Yeah, but for some reason for me, the Baldwin brother love is, you know.
You are listening to episode 34 of the Unnecessary Nonsense Podcast, the podcast of two unqualified idiots rambling on sports topics they likely know nothing about for an indeterminate timeline in a hastily thrown together format. Brought to us by It's November! I'm Carlos Alcazar. With me, as is most of the case, Dave Turnbull.
November. Yes, it is, Carlos. And you know what that means? Grey Cup.
It means something. It means something. I'm more partial to the Avco Cup. You know, legitimate cups. Memorial Cup. You know, my cup of beer. Like, there's some real cups, and then, you know, there's that other one.
Whatever works for you, man.
Hey, listen. When you get the Aqua Cup or the Fuchsia Cup, then we're talking. Gray's a little dull for me. Not feeling it. Not feeling that cup. Anyway, it's been a little while since we've done a podcast. You know, scheduling issues, some life gets in the way a little bit, and some things have happened. And I do want to address one thing before we get into it. We won't do the regular news and notes. We will do a little bit of that. But one thing I do want to address is that we kind of have to do a little recap of the World Series because it did end. It's been a little over a week now since the World Series ended. And I'll be honest with you, I do have a couple of thoughts in here. We won't go into all of them, but I do want to talk about a couple of specific things. First of all is, congratulations to the Washington Nationals on winning the World Series. For the first time technically in the city since 1924. That franchise does not go back to 1924. It goes back to 69 when the Montreal Expos became a franchise and then moved to Washington. Half-hearted, belated congratulations to the former Expos franchise, current Washington franchise. Good for the people of Washington anyway. At least their teams won something. They did get the Stanley Cup.
People live in Washington?
Sometimes. They did get the Stanley Cup, though, a couple of years ago, so that was good. And now the baseball team has won something. And the football team is doomed, probably. Take what you can get. So at least that's something. I will say, though, that one of the biggest things that stuck out to me in this World Series was, this is probably and I was saying to Dave earlier, this is probably one of the dullest 7-game World Series that I can think of in recent memory. Only because, although you did have 7 games technically should be filled with drama. And I guess there were isolated moments of drama. But it felt like almost every game, obviously the road team won every single game, which is really a rare occurrence. I don't know if that's happened before. I don't believe so. I think that was a first for the World Series. And considering how long the game's been around, any firsts are kind of stand out. But the real issue for me was that none of the games were really in doubt. In fact, I think Game 1 was the only game that was like kind of a one-run game. Everything else just kind of like, once a team got ahead by a couple of runs, that was more or less the end of it. With the exception of Game 7 where, you know, a 2-0 lead evaporated, but, you know, 2-0 isn't quite the same as having 3 or 4 or 5 runs. Once you got to about 3 or 4 runs, though, up, I think that was curtains for every single game in that series, which is kind of rare and also kind of takes a little of the drama, a little of the fun out of it, because there were really no big comebacks.
Yeah, I think like you said earlier when we were talking about this before we went on air, this is probably a World Series that's going to be remembered for. Obviously, it's going to be remembered for the Nationals winning it. But I think when people look to, okay, you know, what was the signature moment in this series, or what was it about this series just to stand out, or whatever, it's going to be, well, Washington won, good for Washington. You know, it didn't seem to be that they had a huge amount of drama, and it's one of those things where whenever they make the HD DVD of the World Series highlights, Carlos.
The HD DVD?
Yeah, that's just a dig. You know that's a dig at you for the Green Bay Super Bowl, right?
I understand, but the HD DVD was an actual format. And
well, you know what I mean. The
Blu-ray.
Whatever.
Blu-ray.
You know what I meant, though.
I have HD DVDs. I can give you one.
No, it's fine. It's still a dig at the fact that for some reason that Green Bay Super Bowl is the only Super Bowl that isn't in HD. But you know,
I would like to think that, and I can only hope that the box set actually only comes out on DVD. Then the Washington Nationals fans can feel my pain.
Fair enough. You know, I just don't envy the person whose job it is to make a highlight package of this and make it sound like it was a compelling series.
That's true. They do historically they have had that. So they usually have like the two things. You've got like the the World Series highlight DVD, which is just like the one DVD that talks about the whole series, like a mini documentary. And then you've got the box set that has all the games. Normally the box set with all the games is kind of the one that's kind of fun. If your team wins, that's the one you want to get because then you can kind of relive that moment. I have a few of those, even though the Jays never got one released, and I don't think they're going to unless they win another one. I do have like the 2001 World Series on a box set DVD, and that was a ridiculous series. And then the 2011, which was a ridiculous. So think of a comparison. This is why I'm saying, like, when we're talking about 7-game series, I'm thinking of like 2000. I think 2001 went to 7 games as well.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, so that was an exciting World Series.
Well, with the amount of blown saves and then the walk-off hit.
It was back and forth. There was drama all
Mariano
over.
Rivera on the mound for the walk-off hit. Like, you know, those things.
And 2011 was when the St. Louis Cardinals beat the Texas Rangers. And that was where the Texas Rangers had the series won several times and couldn't close the door. And then St. Louis ended up coming back to. That's a 7-game series that, like, we're almost a decade past both the first one, the second one, and then almost 2 decades past the first one. And I can tell you moments in the 2001 World Series that I remember vividly, and I can tell you moments in the 2011 World Series that I remember vividly. And although I enjoyed the fact that the Nationals won, I enjoyed their players, I enjoyed the franchise and how they built that team. I don't know if I'm going to remember the 2019 World Series with quite the same vividness. Even though it's made it to 7 games, I just don't know if it's going to stick with me quite to the same degree. Now, so that's the main kind of overarching thing. A couple of more quick notes and thoughts that I have on the World Series as well that I kind of want to talk about a little bit, and I'd like to get your 2 cents on this as well. So there's 2 things. I want to know when A.J. Hinch went full Dave Roberts. What the heck happened there in Game 7? And what I'm referring to here, really, is what it comes down to is Zach Greinke was pitching well in Game 7. And Houston, really, after Game 5, it looked like Washington was dead to rights. Game 6, they were facing Strasburg. Strasburg won the MVP of the World Series. So he was lights out. So he was pitching great the whole series anyway. But the thing is, so Game 6, I can give it to you. That's not a big deal. What I would say, though, in Game 7 is Zach Greinke was pitching well. He got into a little bit of trouble, gave up a run, gave up a walk. But the thing is, he was still pitching well. But if you're going to pull him, in my opinion, and this is something I mentioned to Dave, in my opinion, I think at that point you go with your best pitcher. Whoever you've got that's the best, it's Game 7. You've got no more games after this. And, you got free agency coming up with some of these players. You throw out Garrett Cole. You get him to pitch a couple innings for you, and then you get to the closer. That's really all you have to do. Shut the door on this thing. Don't leave it open-ended. Don't put somebody else out there. And A.J. Hinch just decides to, start trying to get really clever. He starts going into his book going like, oh, who can I do, matchups? I'm like, no. Garrett Cole is your best pitcher. Send out your best guy. Even if he has to pitch 4 innings, who cares? It's Game 7 of the World Series. You're not getting – he'll have months to recover. His job at that point is just to shut it down, and I promise you I don't think he would have fought you on this. I think he would have gone out there and pitched. And then at least you would have gone – and then if you still lose, at least you went out throwing out your best gun. At least you're going to feel like you did everything you could.
Yeah, but I think even because he's a starter, because he's already pitched, because he's on short rest, I think if it turned out the same way it did, I think you're still leaving yourself open to a bunch of second guessing if you're AJ Hinch.
Totally.
It's got to go well for you, and otherwise people are going to second guess you.
Totally.
In either scenario.
But AJ Hinch had one advantage by doing the Garrett Cole move. Garrett Cole was going to be a free agent next year. Number 1. Number 2. Garrett Cole was your best pitcher. So from that perspective, it makes perfect logical sense. Number 3, let's talk about that 2001 World Series I mentioned to you. You know who pitched right at the end of the series on basically no rest? Randy Johnson. No one cares. It's Game 7 of the World Series. At that point,
and it worked out, too.
Yeah. But the thing is, even if it doesn't work out, you've already won a World Series. The point is you have a little bit more leeway. We can give Dave Roberts the business on all his managerial decisions because guess what? He has nothing to show for it. If he had won a World Series, we'd have to give him some leeway. He could do some really stupid stuff, and we have to at least give him the courtesy of some leeway that
that's absolutely
you did
fair.
win something. Where A.J. Hinch had that. So at that point, you know what? You can take the risk. And then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I would say, so that's one aspect of it, but leading off of that aspect of it, the other reason why I'm kind of keen on hitting on this point, so again, congrats to the Nationals, but they're almost like a side story to this. The bigger impact of this, and this is kind of an interesting thing for me, is that the Houston Astros blowing this. And for all intents and purposes, to be blunt, they did. Because after Game 5, they were in control. They were really cruising towards another championship, second in 3 years. The Houston Astros kind of put themselves in this precarious position where they were all primed and lined up to potentially be the team of this decade. Every decade has a team, a franchise, somebody that, kind of dominates. And, you can do it by different criteria. And The Ringer actually did an excellent article on this. And if I can find the article for you, I'll add it to the show notes for this one. And they actually were talking about this exact issue, because now that we're at the end of the decade, next year is 2020, we're going to start a new decade. So now we can go back and think about the decade that was and try to think back on who was the best team of this decade. And it was kind of interesting because you had a bunch of World Series winners. It wasn't like one team totally dominated. However, the conversation gets interesting because in the first half of the decade, the Giants won 3 World Series in that 5-year span with the alternate year thing.
Yep.
The fact that it was the alternate year thing, though, kind of made it weird because it's like you never won back to back, but you won a World Series, didn't win, you won again, you didn't win, and you won again.
Correct.
3 World Series in a decade, though, is pretty cool.
Yes,
like it's
absolutely.
solid, it's strong. But then in the back half of the decade, Houston came on strong. In the first half of the decade, Houston was actually garbage. And then the second half is where they've gone into this run. Well, here's the thing. 2 and 3 years would have kind of put an exclamation point at the end of the decade and been like, they're still a strong contender because of how good they were. Because last year they could have made the World Series 2.
Yep.
Were it not for
Absolutely.
some
They could have,
injuries.
a couple things have gone their way.
Exactly. And they came within a hair, within one victory of winning this one. So the thing is, it's hard to take Houston completely out of it, but they could have put an exclamation point on this thing with the 2 dominant performances. The fact that San Francisco hasn't been relevant in the second half of the decade makes it a more interesting conversation. The Red Sox had a couple of good teams this decade. So it's like there's real conversation that you can throw out there that like there's some teams that can lay claim. And then smack in the middle of all of this, and almost forgotten, because I think it happened this decade, Kansas City Royals, who aren't in contention, but it's just kind of funny that they're there in the middle of the whole thing.
Well, and I mean,
and
you
the
even
Chicago
have,
Cubs.
Well, and you even have the Dodgers, who haven't actually won anything, but have had a consistent level of regular season success with some moderate postseason.
What's
success.
funny though is if I'll send you a link to the article too, they were in that conversation because because you have to factor that in. Regular season wins does matter. The fact that you were really, really good consistently throughout the decade matters. The World Series is like the exclamation point. It's like the extra piece that is a sauce that puts you over the top. But that discussion, I think, is fascinating. Because now that we've got the decade over, like, so who is the most dominant team? Because it's tough. You have a team that dominated the back end. You have a team that dominated the front end. And you have a team that was consistently good throughout, but didn't win anything. And then you had a couple of random teams sprinkled in there as well.
Yeah.
So it's just, you could make a legitimate argument. The point is that the Astros had a chance to propel themselves right to the top of that line. Because they would be the enduring last memory of the 2010s if they had just put the finishing touches on this thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's another piece that I enjoyed. And then the last piece, that you could argue is under the great karmic what if. The real question is, I don't think it actually had any bearing. However, distractions are distractions. And when you create them yourself, it's an unforced error. The former assistant GM, Brandon Taubman or Taubman or whatever, going on a rant with the female reporters about Roberto Osuna. Like, Roberto Osuna being on that team was always going to be controversial. Don't bring attention to it. That's like the ultimate unforced error. Like, shut up. There's really no reason.
Yeah, I think just shut up is probably what sums that up as best as possible.
All you
That
have
was
to do
just
is
so dumb.
There was genuinely no reason to say anything. You really could have just... Because here's the interesting thing, and we'll never know. Now we'll never know for sure now because of the way it turned out. But at the same time, any distraction you create when the Nationals, it was interesting about the Nationals in this year's World Series is that they were the underdog because Houston was such a powerhouse. But in any other year, the Nationals could have been a favorite against almost any other matchup that you could have put together. They would have been compellingly interesting against almost anybody else because they had that front line top end pitching and they had great hitters and they had all the components to be great. So when you're that close, because Houston was great, and they should have been historically great, and they had a chance to put together a historically great season this year that they blew. But when you're that close and you're that great against another team that is legitimately great, any distraction, any slight edge, anything that takes away from the business to just get the job done is a problem. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know if it had any impact at all. But it's just interesting that you put into focus a guy that Roberto Osuna could have been the guy to pitch the final inning to win a World Series and clinch it, and now it's not going to happen. At least not this year. Maybe in future, maybe they'll have another run, they'll gear back up and go back for another run after this. But it's hard to say. It's hard to know. So that's another little side angle on the World Series. That's what I said. There's a lot of meat on this bone, the World Series.
But it's not just that. I mean, it's something that even within a controversy, could have not been that big of a deal. But it's the fact that
If you just apologize immediately,
well,
and just
that,
try to
but
move
also
fast.
the fact that Houston denied that it ever happened, put out a statement to that effect.
Yeah.
Then were called out on that. It was proven that it did happen. Then they had to retract the statement they put out. Like it was just one misstep after another. Right? If he had just said, "I'm sorry," in the first place, it probably would have gone away.
Yeah, I think. But like I said, you created a distraction where there wasn't one. That's the ultimate to me in an unforced error, and it's just
No,
dumb.
absolutely.
It's
I think you calling it unforced error is probably the most apt description of that whole saga that there can be.
yeah, it's not a big thing in the grand scheme of things, but it is something worth noting because, as I said, when you're so close, now you're splitting hairs. The two teams were close enough that you don't want to give the other team any kind of an edge where they don't have to deal with the distraction that you created for yourself. That's never a good thing. So I'm not surprised he lost his job, and at the same time, he deserved it because that was a really stupid thing to do. Just in general, forget about whether you're okay with what he said or not. It was a stupid thing to do, just in general. So that's another piece of that. And a final piece that I'll say about that as well, overall, my takeaway from a lot of this, there's a lot of fascinating things. The whole team of the decade thing was an interesting thing that I found that's why I really wanted to discuss it a little bit. The overall legacy of these teams in the series. If Washington does nothing else, they can ride on this for a while because that was great for them. And there's a bunch of other teams, though, that are going to have to look at this series now and wonder if they miss an opportunity. But at the same time, also kind of an interesting little side story to this is, what about Justin Verlander? And what I mean when I say that is, Justin Verlander has pitched very well in the playoffs in general, but he's still 0-6 in the World Series. And that's despite the fact he does have that ring with Houston. It's weird. He's avoided a lot of the stigma of Kershaw because he's had great performances leading up to the World Series. So in playoffs in general, he's actually quite good. But for some reason, the World Series just hasn't worked for him.
And he also has a ring now, too.
Yeah, he does. But that's the thing. Like, in the end, it didn't hurt him. In the end, he still does have... This would be a different conversation if he hadn't had that first World Series ring in, I think, 2017. If he hadn't been on that team and they had not gotten the job done, it would be a different conversation. But it is kind of interesting, the parallels, in the sense that Justin Verlander is still more or less at the top of his game, but he just can't seem to get that World Series win. It's just kind of weird the way that's worked out. And then the other teams that have to look at from the outside looking in is, are the Yankees going to be able to retool and actually come back? Because they lost to a legitimately great team. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know if they're actually geared up well to make another run next year. They've got components, they've got pieces. But they're one of those teams, because there's always a team like that is just kind of on the outside. They have enough talent on paper. It looks like they could. Opportunities create themselves there, but then you can't get over the hump. And sometimes you just miss the window completely. That's why this Washington run was kind of crazy, because they were always the team that missed that opportunity.
Yeah.
They would be really good, and they would just fail. And this is the one time they didn't fail, and they got all the way to the end and actually won the damn thing. So that's why sometimes that's what happens. That's weird. I'm thinking back to like Chicago Cubs in 2016, and they thought that a dynasty was coming together because of all the young players and everything, and we're still waiting. it didn't happen.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, you know what? Take it when it comes. If it comes, just take it.
Yeah.
You have no idea. Anything can happen, and it could all fall apart tomorrow. But at least you got the one. It's the Toronto Raptors thing. You got one. Take it. Enjoy it. Have fun. All right. I did want to talk about a little bit of the World Series, so there's a little bit of a World Series recap. We got that in. All right, Dave, talk about some gray cups, dark gray cups, light gray. What do you got?
I mean, I got a lot of things that
all
we
right,
can
all right.
talk about.
Where do you want to go? Go ahead.
Let's go Antonio Brown first.
Our favorite guy.
Because Antonio Brown is the gift that keeps on giving.
Future XFL superstar Antonio Brown.
Yeah, I don't even know. So here's my thing. And let me go on a couple of points here.
Please.
That I have. So the latest Antonio Brown is, he put out yet another tweet where he's basically like, I mean, you can get the exact wording if you want, but the idea where he's like, I'm done with the NFL, they're not making any more money off my blood and sweat and all that jazz. And he's like, it's not happening. Okay, well, this isn't really that big of a news, I don't think, in the sense that he'd already sort of said that he was done with the NFL, but it's now related to the fact that the NFL has asked to meet with him in relation to some of the allegations of sexual assault. So there is sort of that timing piece where I think in some ways maybe Antonio Brown was thinking, hey, if I say this or I put this tweet out, maybe it's going to take some focus away from the fact that I'm being interviewed by the NFL, whereas I think it does actually the exact opposite based on what's happened. But there's two things in this that I find more interesting than the actual tweet itself or the fact that he's getting interviewed by the NFL.
Go on.
Okay? So these are... Because one of the things I want to do is I actually went to his Twitter feed because I wanted to see, around the thing, what's there.
This is Dave hanging around in the dark web right now.
Yeah. So first of all, he's liked a bunch of tweets from the Mexican Football League.
As you do.
So it's like, he's
Viva la Mexico, Dave.
basically being like, hey, you know what? I'll come play in Mexico.
Viva la Mexico, Dave.
Okay. Hey, you know what? Yeah, Viva Mexico. But here's the other interesting thing. You know who likes a bunch of Antonio Brown's tweets? You know who Antonio Brown keeps retweeting?
Go on.
Daniel Baldwin. As in one of the Baldwin brothers. Like, really?
Listen, you're friend with one of the Baldwin brothers. Does he retweet him too?
Maybe. But I was like, this is odd.
Everything about Antonio Brown is odd. There is nothing that he has done in the last maybe 18 months that is not odd.
Yeah, but for some reason for me, the Baldwin brother love is,
But you know what? I'm at the point with Antonio Brown that he has fallen into, I'll quote a Bill Simmons like shtick from back in the day. Antonio Brown has entered the Tyson zone. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Okay, so conceptually, I'll quickly explain.
Obviously, I'm assuming it's linked somewhat to the Twilight Zone and that kind of idea.
But also specifically to Mike Tyson.
Yeah, so...
But what that means is, it means when an athlete transcends our regular boundaries of our world to the point that I can tell you a story about said athlete, and no matter how outlandish or ridiculous, you would believe it. Because there's just so much weirdness that surrounds this person that at this point, like, almost everything is in play. Hence what happened with Mike Tyson at his prime, at his peak. Mike Tyson was so crazy that I could tell you that he went in, claimed he was abducted by space aliens, basically went in and robbed a bank half naked while covered in whipped cream. And you could be like, while that sounds weird, I could believe that happened. The point is, no matter how ridiculous the story is, you could be like, okay, under normal circumstances, I would say like you're full of crap, but it's Mike Tyson. So it's plausible? That's when you've entered the Tyson zone.
Yeah.
And right now, Antonio Brown is there.
Oh, totally. And he's been arrived there for a while.
Yeah, but once you're in that zone, man, it's like, there's almost nothing you could tell me that I couldn't be like, I could see that. So him, being an honorary Baldwin, sure, why not? Maybe he could be in a movie with one of the Baldwins. Why not? At this point, though, since you've entered into the dark web, I almost want to send you an assignment. I almost want to force you to be like, all right, there's only one logical place you can go now. You must go to the YouTube channel and watch the Antonio Brown YouTube channel. Oh, yes.
Yeah, no, I don't think I want to.
No, you want to. I know you want to.
No, I'm not sure I do.
Secretly, you do. Secretly, deep down inside, you're like, I have to know. What is this fool doing? What is he saying? Because,
Is Daniel Baldwin on the YouTube channel?
How do I know he's not?
Okay.
There's no way for me to know. I can't answer that.
Then maybe I will go try and find that out.
I genuinely can't answer that question because I have seen it on my feed here and there, but I refuse to click on it. It's like, you ever seen The Ring? I think I would die.
No, I know, but I know the premise of it.
I'm fairly confident I would actually just burst into flames spontaneously if I started watching that YouTube channel. I can't do it. But that's why. But
you're willing to sacrifice me.
You probably have nothing to live for. The point is that and probably what you should do. And this would be some content that I would put up. I would want a direct review and comparison between the Antonio Brown YouTube channel and the Cam Newton YouTube channel, because that would be fascinating.
Yeah, that's a rabbit hole I'm not prepared to go down.
He recently passed 100,000 subscribers. I know this because one of those videos came up on the feed as well, and I'm like, I'm not doing it. Nope, can't go there. The man is probably just talking about hats. How do I know he's not reviewing hats?
I'm proud that you have resisted that, Carlos.
I have to. I can't. I spend way too much time on YouTube legitimately, and just so everybody knows, this is just a little public service message for everybody. If you have the YouTube app on your phone, now I have YouTube Premium, so I don't know if this applies to the regular YouTube as well. It might. If you have the regular app, you can actually see time watched on the YouTube channel. And it'll tell you how much time you've watched in a day, your average, whatever. So I'm just going to show you something. I want you to look at that.
Okay. So there's 4 hours and 14-minute daily average. That's if you watching YouTube in total?
Yes.
Okay.
Daily average.
Up 56% from last week.
Yeah.
Okay, so am I looking at the last 7 days?
So right now you got the last 7 days. So how many hours?
29 hours, 38 minutes.
I have spent comfortably over a day of my life in the last week watching YouTube. Now, mind you, in fairness, I do want to make one point. You can kind of cheat that system a little bit because I do watch it at 1.75 to 2 times speed, and I think it counts the total time.
Yeah, it probably does.
So just so we're clear, it's not actually 29 physical hours, I think, based on, the way they measure it.
Still, that's a lot of time watching YouTube, Carlos.
So the point is, I watch that much YouTube, and I still refuse to watch the Antonio Brown or Cam Newton YouTube channel. Not happening. That's a hard no for me.
All right.
I do watch enough sports content, though, that it does come up in my recommendations regularly. That's how I know what's going on. And it's like, all right, cool, guys. Good for you. I can't. No.
Noted.
That's a no. All right, Antonio Brown, what else you got?
All right, let's go. Well, let's go CFL.
All right, here's our Canadian content.
Oh, there's a lot of Canadian content. Just wait for the pretentious Scotts County running report.
All right, hit me, Turnbull. What do you got?
So, something that kind of struck me as interesting, and I think I'd like to get your thoughts on this. So, I'll put this out first. So, for the MOP award, I guess I'll put it like this. So, the CFL names their MVP award the MOP, meaning most outstanding player.
Which actually I do, as much as I slag the CFL, and they deserve a lot of slagging because, the SS for sucks. But the point is, I legitimately think that makes more sense linguistically as an award because most valuable is so hard to define.
Well,
the most outstanding is a little easier.
I agree with you because I think if you look at most sports, right, that have an MVP award,
Yes.
it is not the most valuable player necessarily who gets that award.
Yeah.
It is the most outstanding player.
Yeah.
More often than not.
Which is why Mike Trout has ever won one ever. Because he's not valuable.
You're just hating on Mike Trout, man.
Listen, at some point we'll have a longer conversation about this. Mike Trout is the no-calorie superstar. He is made with aspartame. He basically, it's not real. It's not real sugar. But, there's liquid there. You can consume it. He's the empty calorie superstar.
There you go. All right. But, yeah, so I think that's a thing a trend that I would sort of like to see in other sports, is them changing the MVP to the MOP.
Now, I was actually going to ask you this question. So based on what you just said, though, would you want them to change it, or would you want them to have both?
No.
Because I can actually live with both.
Sure, I could live with both, but I don't think it's necessary.
But the thing is, I would love for there to be a distinction between the best player that year, statistically or whatever, because that, I think, is more objectively easier to define, whereas valuable is a little more subjective.
Correct. Agreed.
Because I think somebody who's legitimately valuable, who might not have the best stats that year, but has contributed through their team winning games and helped them get there and do whatever, I feel like they should be recognized. Maybe they don't have the best stats that year, but maybe they just went in and busted their ass and got them a couple extra wins that they wouldn't have otherwise gotten. That's the most valuable to me.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
But as I said, an argument can be made. But if you're only gonna have one, I do prefer the most outstanding. So I do think the CFL got it right on this one.
All right.
So I did compliment the CFL. There you go. Right down.
There you go. Mark it down. Date, timestamp. When you're listening to this podcast, Carlos complimented the CFL. This is a momentous thing.
It may not happen again. So take it.
Exactly. So something else I find interesting about this, though, is the two candidates. The way the CFL does their awards is each team nominates a player for each award.
Yeah.
And then it is narrowed down to one person for the East, one person for the West, and then when they have the CFL award ceremony, one of those
fight
two
to the
people
death.
wins. That would also probably give you more props for the CFL if they actually did
Thunderdome.
that. Even better.
I'm saying I'm literally giving
If they can get Tina Turner for it.
I'm literally giving you CFL ideas. Hashtag ratings.
Hey, you know what? The TSN contract's up at the end of this year, so that might be something they need for next year.
Jokes aside, do you think anybody else is going to be competing for that contract?
I don't know. I think the CBC might go in somewhat for that. We'll see.
Do they have money after they buy gum in a coffee machine?
No, but I also wonder how much does TSN really want it.
I think so. Quick sidebar, because this is a good topic. Here's the thing. I think TSN wants it, but I think TSN is also able to go wait a minute. We literally don't have anyone competing for this TV contract. Why are we even paying them?
Well, that's the thing. If it depends, like if the number's low enough because TSN's like whatever, then CBC may have enough money to pay for it.
But fair enough.
Or get some. Maybe it's one of the things where it's not an exclusive contract for one network.
But the thing is, for the CFL, that might be wise. How I would say though, the thing though is, I feel like TSN could be like, all right, look, tell us what CBC comes back with, and we'll offer you $100 more. And then, they come back and say, okay, so you can have $101. So that's all you're getting. So the thing is, I genuinely don't know. Because, let's put it this way. CBC's bread and butter sports-wise has been for years, decades, Hockey Night in Canada. Mm-hmm. And the Hockey Night in Canada thing, they basically only still have it by the good graces of Sportsnet, because Sportsnet knew they would get skewered over the coals if they took away CBC's thing. So they actually it's almost like a charitable contribution. They basically gave CBC the right to still have their game.
Correct.
In return for kind of borrowing and usurping the Hockey Night in Canada thing. Because if you look nowadays with the way that Sportsnet did, now they spent mega money on that NHL deal some years back. So now if you go on Saturday night in Canada, you got the CBC games on, and then sometimes you got a game on City TV, and you got a game on some weird networks that hockey hasn't been
Rogers' own network.
Yeah, but hockey wasn't on those networks not that long ago. But now obviously they are, and that's great for the Canadian hockey fan. That's actually really awesome, because some of those networks, you get on regular, TV cable packages, not a big deal. But then you get to watch them. You've actually got a couple more options to watch games, which is sweet, for the viewer. You don't need to buy the hockey package necessarily. If you happen to have it, then you get all the games anyway. But if not, you can watch. You don't have to watch the Leafs game on Saturday night if you don't want to. So I think that's the biggest win for Canadian hockey fans. But I'm just saying the CBC thing is kind of almost a gift. Like I said, I don't know if they have the ability to pay for the rights. Basically, the most exciting sports-related thing that I think CBC has been able to execute that I can think of outside of Hockey Night in Canada is I think they got the Premier 12 Baseball Championship, which I stumbled upon by accident in my parents' house.
I don't even know what that is.
That is apparently an international competition that I didn't know about, that apparently is to qualify for the Olympics. So and they actually have legitimate teams in it. I didn't even know this was a thing.
Is Panama in there?
Absolutely not. They suck. They are what the kids call not good. They are garbage AF. Like, it's just so bad. But the Dominican Republic is in it. The Team USA is in it. Like, Puerto Rico's in it. Like,
Canada?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, they've got legitimate
So pretty
teams.
much everybody except that plays baseball except Panama.
The Netherlands is in it.
Yeah. So everyone except Panama.
Listen, we got no hit by the Dutch. I will not have you besmirch the Dutch.
Hey, man, my background is 1/4 Dutch. I just think that's hilarious that the Dutch are better at baseball than Panama. There's something wrong with that, Carlos.
I feel like coming out of retirement in baseball at age 36, going on 37, and I go, I will now be the dominant player on this team. What a low bar.
It might not be a bad idea, though.
It'll be me and Bruce Chen carrying
you
this
can
franchise.
still speak Spanish. Yeah, Bruce Chen will probably still be there.
Yeah, it'll be me
and
Bruce
the weather's better than it is here.
Yeah. Well, the only person I will tell you who won't make that team, Ruben Rivera. Never again. That's a story for another day. All right.
Okay.
Please go on.
So if we go back to the actual candidates for this award now?
Oh, dear Lord. Is that something? All right, please.
It's okay.
Go on.
All right. So
I love the sidetrack, though. We went to such a good place.
It was a good sidetrack.
Okay, go ahead.
So it's Cody Fajardo. Well, let me tell you what's interesting.
Okay, fine, sure.
So he's a quarterback for the Saskatchewan Roughriders.
Who? Okay, go on.
It's interesting because he's their backup quarterback. He came in.
We discussed this like forever ago. That this has been the year of the backup quarterback.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, go on.
Well, look at this. The two best teams in the CFL record-wise are the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the Hamilton Tiger Cats.
Yeah.
Okay? Both who played the majority of the season, well, with their backup quarterback, but also in a sense that their starting quarterback never came back.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And for the Ticats, I mean, I don't know if it's the same situation with Saskatchewan, but for the Ticats, their starting quarterback was out for the year. It was an ACL. They knew he was gone.
Right.
Right? And now they're the favorite to win the Grey Cup.
Sure.
Anyway, so Cody Fajardo, who led the league in passing yards as well, which I think is no small feat for a backup quarterback. Right? So I think it's sort of an unusual sort of MOP kind of year. Because your other choice potentially is Brandon Banks of the Ticats, who's a wide receiver. Right?
That is kind of interesting, yeah.
So you have a backup quarterback versus a wide receiver for your most outstanding player.
Has a wide receiver won out most outstanding player?
Probably at some point in time.
I feel like that'd be very unusual.
I'm sure Milt Stegall has probably won that award. That seems like something that he
That's
would
really... You know what? You're making a valid point. Here's the thing, jokes aside, you're making a valid point. Because a wide receiver winning that type of award, even though it's most outstanding player as opposed to most valuable player, it would be hard for a wide receiver to win only because it is such a dependent position. You are relying on the quarterback delivering the ball. At the end of the day, if your quarterback is truly garbage, Baker Mayfield, then you're not going to be able to get the ball, Odell Beckham. But the thing is, like, you need help. You know, Larry Fitzgerald can testify that when he had good quarterbacking, it was a lot easier.
Can we not dredge that man anymore? Like, I love Larry Fitzgerald. It's just...
He deserves better.
He does.
He deserves so much better.
Why is he still in Arizona?
He's loyal to a fault. You have to kind of credit him, though. Like, out of all the diva wide receivers, Antonio Brown, out of all the diva wide receivers that have been out there, Larry Fitzgerald has conducted himself with nothing but class and, distinction, and the man is punished repeatedly.
No, I mean, there were some years where Arizona was good and they made the Super Bowl the one year.
The Kurt Warner one, though, he was so close. Right? And I was so close to winning that bet. He was so close.
Like, if you pick just anybody out of, if somebody randomly out of the NFL who you're like, this person is just a good human being and deserves a Super Bowl, the name on the top of my list is Larry Fitzgerald.
I think that really NFL people, like, if he went ring, he's not going to do it, but if he went ring chasing, I don't think anyone would begrudge him.
No.
Like, just go for it. Give it one last, do the Ray Bork. Give it one last go with a legitimate team and see what happens. No one would begrudge you.
So apparently this is the Sidebar podcast.
But I'm having fun with it. These are some good sidebars.
Anyway, but overall, I think that's just an interesting matchup for that award, right? Which is something you don't normally see, right? Normally you'd see maybe a quarterback and a running back. But to have a backup quarterback and a wide receiver, albeit, both with really good stats, I find is interesting. I'd also like to give a shout out to the Ticats, who are basically dominating the East in terms of the awards. I think it's pretty much the Ticats have the nominee for every award except most outstanding Canadian.
So is this a part of the annual tradition that now in this scenario, so now they can dominate by having candidates for every award and then be doing really well at the top of the East, so that when they inevitably fail in the playoffs, then it'll be more entertaining for the rest of us?
Something like that, probably.
Yeah. You do realize that they probably should just win the damn Grey Cup at this point. You realize there's like 4 teams in the Grey Cup.
Yeah.
You realize that I won the Grey Cup like 6 times.
Only 6?
Yeah. I only played 6 seasons.
Okay.
So, but I'm just saying, like,
Well, you could all go the Anthony Calvillo route and be like 2-7 in the Grey Cup or whatever it is.
But the thing is, he just doesn't have, the panache that I do.
But hey, even he has got a couple.
Yeah, he's got a couple. I've got 6, and, Ogilvy's got 2, and he just accidentally stumbled in, and he found one of them in a case of beer.
But when we're saying Ogilvy, are we talking about Emerson Ogilvy or Ryan Ogilvy?
Yes. The point is that I think he found one of them in a case of beer is what I'm trying to say.
Also quite possible.
That counts, just so you know.
That's it for the CFL. Ready for my next thing before we add the triumphant end to my notes here?
What do you got?
I have some early NBA thoughts.
He's got early NBA thoughts.
And I'm just going to go through them. I have a list of about 6 or 7 here. And I'll go through them. And if you have anything you want to add or comment on, please do.
Go ahead.
So, first of all, there's been a lot of hype about the Pelicans this season. Mostly before the season because of Zion,
exactly.
Who's injured and out for the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season. But this team looks good in the sense they got a good young talent. They're offensively very entertaining. They have absolutely no defense right now. Case in point, okay, we are watching the Raptors play the Pelicans as we record this podcast, and the Pelicans gave up 75 points to the Raptors in the first half, and Kyle Lowry and Serge Ibaka both went out of the game injured. Mm-hmm. They need defense. Also, I think anyone who is particularly worried about the Raptors should only be worried about the Raptors on one level, and that is their rebounding. Otherwise, the Raptors look good. Siakam, I think, has taken his game to that next level where people were worried about, who's going to be the dominating scorer. Spicy P is doing it. Serge Ibaka, that's his nickname, man.
I got it.
Fred VanVleet looks like he should be a starter the way he's playing. You've got Serge Ibaka, who's an early candidate for 6th Man of the Year.
The thing is,
they look good. Do I think they're going to win the thing again? No, but they're right in the thick of it.
Yeah, no, here's the thing, though. Like, in the East, the team, minus Kawhi Leonard, is still very good. So the reality is the notion that they were going to drop off all and fall all the way off the map was stupid. Like there was no chance. I thought that they were going to play well, and I would say that part of the Kawhi experience was that when they rallied around Kawhi Leonard in the sense that they realized that the only way we're going to win, he is great, he is a great player, and he's giving us a certain edge that we didn't have and everything. But at the same time, the only way we're going to win is if everybody is willing to do their job. And given that this unit, minus Kawhi Leonard, did win a championship together, they have seen the benefits. So it's a lot easier for Nick Nurse to go in and go, guys, we know that we're down, like, our best player, quote unquote. So the only way this is going to work is if everybody comes in to do their job. So when Siakam picks up his game, perfect. When, Van Vliet does his job, great. The point is, there is no room for any of these guys to have a gigantic ego because there's no quote-unquote superstar. Siakam could become a superstar, quote-unquote, but even as a superstar, he's going to be like a second-tier one at best. Like, he's got certain capabilities, but he's not on the Giannis, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard level. Like, he's not on that level. Or KD when he comes back. He's not on that level. But that means he's like the perfect type of superstar for this type of team. Because everybody's bought in like, hey, what the heck? We already won. We're on house money anyway. We may as well try to play as well as we can. See what we can do. And if they get to the playoffs and win a round or something, I'd consider that a great victory. I consider that pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. Lakers looking dominant. LeBron, it looks like a man reborn. Basically saying anyone who thinks I'm old, hold my beer.
I'd be more impressed were it not for the fact that for the first time in his entire career, he basically got to rest during the playoffs. One, so did big deep playoff runs. So he got to recharge his batteries for the first time in years during a playoffs. But number two, also, given that he has Anthony Davis, he is as motivated as he's been in a long time because his first year with the Lakers, it was kind of a write-off. Any realistic person knew that was a write-off. And at the same time, I don't know if LeBron James was there in the shape that he can be. And now I think he's in the shape that he can be. I think he's like, all right, this is about as good an opportunity as any here. If I'm going to do it with this franchise here, I got pieces that I can work with.
Yeah.
And Golden State has fallen off the face of the earth. So
correct.
So like that's going to help. That can only assist in this situation. And nobody in the East is like destructively dominant. There's some really good teams. No. But I don't think anybody's that dominant.
Speaking of the East, I'll go in there too. I have a couple more things. Right. But Boston is really looking like Kyrie Irving was the issue. And the chemistry was a problem. And now that that's not a problem anymore, and they basically replaced Irving with Kyrie Walker, they've replaced Kemba Walker is the replacement. That, they look pretty good. And Kyrie Irving is causing his own drama in Brooklyn. So, You know what? Maybe he is the problem.
Well, he's a head case. He should go on Antonio Brown's YouTube channel. I think they'd have a good time. But the thing is that the Boston Celtics are kind of the opposite of what happened with the Raptors. They had a team that did the do-your-job thing, and they did very well. They were almost there at the end of the Eastern Conference Finals, almost getting to the NBA championship. Then they got Kyrie Irving, and it all went in the tank. They got Kyrie Irving back for full season, and it went in the tank. Because all of a sudden, everybody realized, we don't actually need the guy. So it created this problem where he had this idea. It's like, I'm the star, and blah, 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 and all of you defer to me. And they're like, wait a minute. We were in the playoffs, and we played very well without you. And we got almost right. We were right on the cusp of getting to the next level, to getting to that spot. And it's because they were able to agree to work as a team. That's why I say, the Raptors in this case have one advantage over them. They did win the thing. So it's a lot easier for all the players to come back in and buy in. And, hey, you know what? We're on house money. Let's give it a try. Where the Boston guys fell just short, but then they got in this malcontent in there who just tried to take over, and it was weird.
Yeah.
Chemistry-wise, it was just weird. And I don't think... And also, Gordon Hayward just was still kind of damaged goods. And I think from what I hear, he's playing better.
Yeah, so, it sounded like they really tried to bring him back too soon.
Yeah, and I think it helped to have that additional time to heal up and get back closer because he was a good player when they brought him in, and they thought he would be a really good player for them, and it just didn't work out yet.
Exactly.
So It's a fair point. It's a good observation, but I think the whole chemistry thing is just because at this point Kyrie Irving is addition by subtraction. Like he just the only time it ever worked with Kyrie Irving was when he had LeBron, because LeBron was such a big personality and overwhelming that he's like, I'm going to stifle you, little man. Do your job. You have one specific thing you do. Do that thing, and we'll win.
Yeah, and they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then my last thing is welcome back load management.
Listen, we did some load management on this podcast. We took a little time off.
True.
And I will be blunt.
Listen, and are we any worse for it? No.
Listen, I will have you know, sir. I will have you know that, not to toot our own horn, but these segues and complete offshoots have been gold.
It's true. I can't deny that.
There's been some taking shots at Antonio Brown. I've taken shots at Mike Trout. The only literally the only thing this load management situation has done, the only thing we could do that would be better than the load management we just did would be to immediately go, we are getting a little older, Dave. You know, we have to kind of think we could go on an HGH TB12 cycle. You know, that might help us, and you know, we could win a couple of Super Bowls.
We're not there yet.
Any minute now. I'm just saying. Listen, he started right around this point. It's like, you know, he had the resurrected career. You know, he had the same career track as a Barry Lamar Bonds, except for some reason we don't look at Tom Brady. Just a little questionable. Just saying, the exact same career trajectory with the early 40s thing and playing about the same. Barry Lamar Bonds. Just
I'll just leave that out there.
I just thought we wouldn't have a resurrected podcast, you know, resurgent, you know, return if I didn't take an unprovoked shot at Tom Brady.
This is true. All right, so those are my early season NBA thoughts with Carlos's commentary and sidebar. And now,
Gold!
And now, Carlos, the intro, please. You knew it was coming.
Yeah.
And if you didn't, you should have expected it.
Yeah, unfortunately. All right. The most excited segment for anyone in parts of the basically wherever poor people reside. The favorite segment of the poor people of the world, the Pretentious Cross Country Running Report with Dave Trimble.
And this week, it's all about Canadian soccer.
Whoa.
And so let's go there, because some interesting things have happened in Canadian soccer basically since we've last been on the air, which are worth noting. So first of all, and in no particular order, I think it's actually, most recent to not so recent, but Hamilton won the Canadian Premier League Championship.
Oh, dear Lord, I forgot about this league. Okay.
So Forge FC is your
Did
Canadian
you
Premier
go
League
to any
Championship.
games?
I went to the opener,
Okay.
of which I got a free ticket, and basically Bob Young gave away tickets to anyone who wanted to go to that game.
You are truly a connoisseur and a patron of Canadian soccer.
Well, look at this. I thought that I won I got an email like, you won. I'm like, sweet, I won a ticket. And then I find out that really anybody who wanted to go could go for free. He just wanted to pack the stadium, and you know.
It was weird.
It was a good crowd.
It was weird. One of my Grey Cup wins was when I got an email like that. You won! Yeah! It was weird. It happened almost the same way.
So I just want to say congratulations to Hamilton. It was a home and away against Calgary, or Calvary FC, which is in Calgary. And Hamilton won both legs 1-0.
Do you have any idea how wonderful it would be if Calgary FC was in Edmonton?
Yes.
Or in, like, Nunavut? That'd be great.
The other thing that I found was interesting is that they said that before the season started, they said that they needed about 4,000 average attendance throughout the league to be sustainable.
Okay, sure.
Okay? And they averaged about 4,200.
That seems kind of low, but yeah, I guess so. How much were the tickets?
Like $20.
So 4,000. So maybe. So
now, I don't know about other teams.
Yeah.
Obviously, some venues were bigger than others.
Yeah, for sure.
And some
but
had smaller
so
crowds.
4,000. So was that? Did they have like different tier tickets, or was it kind of like a general admission thing?
I think there were for Hamilton, but I'm only familiar with Hamilton games. I never looked up for any other team.
Not fair enough. But even if you average it out at that $20, you're talking like $80,000 a game. How much are you paying the players?
Yeah, I don't know. But that's what they said.
Are you paying them in like Timmy's gift cards? Like what are you giving them? Okay.
But
sure.
That's what they said, and they've exceeded what the threshold they set for the first year, which I think is good for the league and good for Canadian soccer. The second piece, believe it or not, Toronto FC is back in the MLS Cup final, which takes place on Sunday.
Is that why you're wearing the Toronto FC sweater?
Yes, that is correct.
By the way, actually, minus the Toronto FC, which makes it lame. That seems like a good quality sweater.
It is. It's nice. Very nice. Also, Benny T is traveling to Seattle for that game.
What?
That's right. He bought a ticket, and he's via Vancouver going to Seattle with a friend to go to that game.
So do you know what I have to say to that?
Please, let's hear it. What? How is it fair that this kid has that much money?
So what I'm thinking here is, I could go the really lazy route. This is the lowbrow hangover, entitled millennials. In this case, even younger. Well, I think he's still a millennial. By
I think so.
Yeah. I could go with entitled millennials, but I'm a millennial. I'm an OG millennial. So I'm not going to go that route. No, I'm going to go a different route. This right here sounds to me like a self-indulgent wiener with too much bloody money. Like, what the hell? Go to Seattle to see Toronto. Guys, we gotta go to Seattle. Why are we going to Seattle? We're gonna see a Space Needle? No. We're gonna go check out like Nintendo and some of the other Microsoft and the things that are over there in Washington State? No, we're not gonna do that. We're gonna go see Toronto SC play the Seattle team. Yeah!
So, but two things. One is the Seattle Sounders, that's their name.
Woo.
Also, it is in CenturyLink Field.
They should have called them the Seattle Supersonics.
It is in the Seattle Seahawks Stadium. So there is that.
Do they think they can fill it?
It's sold out.
For like a football, well, it wouldn't be a football configuration.
I guess like 67,000 tickets they sold, something like that.
We're about to go into another sidebar. So I'm going to begin with this. My reply is going to be, what? My sidebar is I was actually having a conversation with my mom earlier last week where I did basically a line like that, and I was laughing because she tried to like mimic that, and she just can't hit that note, and she just doesn't have the vocal range. That's why I said
that's
like
unfortunate.
But that's why I said like it's really kind of sad how the lack of vocal talent you have, and then you keep trying to sing. It's just very sad. Like I said, a little sidebar. Just thought I'd throw that in there.
Nope.
But no, the what is very appropriate. Like what? Although I suppose, in fairness, as much as I like to knock MLS, they have been very successful in some markets. And it is a championship game. It's a one-game playoff, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, yeah, for a one-game playoff in a championship game, and there have been some markets that have done well in stretches, and they do have some name players and stuff. So, and TFC, at least in recent times, has played very well. Because isn't this like their third run in a championship or something?
Their third MLS Cup final in 4 years.
Yeah, so that's pretty good. That's pretty solid.
And it's also impressive they did it as the 4th seed. So they beat DC United in the first game 5-1 in the playoffs, which was sort of expected, and they were the higher seed in that game. That was in Toronto. But then they went on the road and beat NYCFC 2-1, and they
literally
were the
they're
number
called
1 seed.
NYCFC.
Correct.
Wow.
And they beat Atlanta United in Atlanta, and they had over 40,000 for that game.
So, out of curiosity, in that Atlanta United game, was Atlanta up 28-3 late in the game?
They were up 1-0 though. They were up and did lose. So there is that.
Maybe they should have kneeled for the rest of the game. All right. Enough Super Bowl Patriots jokes.
You know what? That because I'm a Saints fan and I hate the Falcons, that will never get old for me.
They should have kneeled. And held the lead.
And then finally, something that hasn't happened since the 80s. The Canadian men's national team beat the United States men's national team 2-0 at BMO Field. And it actually looks like the Canada team may actually be better overall than the American team. And may actually have a better shot at making the next World Cup than the U.S. So that is significant. I'll let you comment on that.
I have genuinely no context, so I'm going to ask a question.
Sure.
My question is as follows. Is this a case of the Canadian men's national team being good enough to beat the U.S., or is it a case of the men's national team being similar to what happened with the American men's basketball team, where they had players who had some talent, but they had barely played together, so other international teams who had inferior talent but had actually played together were then able to beat them?
No, I think it's close because of the way international soccer works too, and how much time you actually get with your national team. I think it's closer to the former rather than the latter, in the sense that Canada's just better right now. American soccer is kind of in a disarray a little bit. You've had a bunch of older players sort of move on, and that next generation is kind of middling and hasn't really stepped up. And you still have some old guard that is playing, but isn't playing, sort of where they were, but they haven't had anyone really come up and replace them yet. There's still obviously some good players on the team. There's just not enough of them.
The reason I'm posing this question is because is a play off of your mention about the MLS thing. You would think then, given that, and you said it's in Seattle, right?
The MLS Cup final, yes.
Yeah. So given that it's in Seattle and they sold it out and did whatever, like you'd feel like there's enough exposure in the U.S. where they should be able to have developed some players that should be ready to take over, because that's really what it is. It's any international sporting event. It's, do you have the players to cycle through? You're always going to have your veteran players who are going to hold it down, and then you transition over to another generation of players. And not that long ago, recently, the Canadian women's hockey team was honored. I think the 2010 team was honored for thing. I don't remember exactly what it was, because but the thing is, like, there's a lot of Canadian women's teams that were really good. So a lot of them have been honored for a lot of things. The point though is that the whole reason why the international women's game for Canada has done so well is that they've always, all right, we got the veteran players, the Haley Wickenheisers, the whoever, and then you get the young players, they play for a while, and then they become the veterans, and then the next one, and then that, blah, 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 blah.
Exactly.
And then the cycle continues and continues. And in the U.S., it's exactly the same thing. That's why those two programs have been so good. A lot of the other international teams in women's international hockey, the reason why they've struggled is because they don't have that back end yet. They haven't built up that foundation of, like, these are the good players who have played well, and then the next generation come in and kind of learn and play with them, and then they phase out and the new ones take over. They just don't have that backing, even though historically they have it. But that's how the international thing works, is that if you're going to have international teams, you have to have the veterans to hold it down, but then you need the influx of the young players to be ready to take over as they learn on the job, so to speak. Mm. So I don't know. It does surprise me though that there's a gap, because effectively what you're saying is there's a little bit of a gap where the next generation isn't quite ready yet, which is a little weird given that it's been kind of ongoing, like it's been consistent. So where did the gap happen? What went there? What went on there?
Well, I think that's a question that I don't fully know the answer to.
Yeah.
But I think it's, soccer does kind of go sometimes in the international, goes through these lulls and dips and whatnot. There's few, even the greatest teams in the world, or the consistently greatest teams in the world, like somewhere like Italy, right? Italy didn't make the last World Cup. So, it does happen periodically where you kind of have a dip and then, they figure things out and then they're back on track all of a sudden.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. It's always been weird to me though when there's those lulls in the international sports, because it's like, okay, I don't know. It seems a little odd. But anyway, fair enough. All right. Anything else you want to add in there?
That's all I got, man.
All right. See, I even contributed to that one. There you go. We're back in rare form. Plus our tangents.
Our sidebar game is strong.
Strong. One more quick thing. It's not really a news note, but it was something that amused me. Did you hear about the thing about the San Diego / London Chargers?
Yes. And the amount of denials that have come out of Los Angeles about it?
Here's just the thing, though. Like,
wait, did you say San Diego?
I did.
Okay. Did you do that on purpose?
Yes, I totally did.
Okay.
Yeah, I refuse to acknowledge. Like, they're not the Los Angeles Chargers. No one cares about them in Los Angeles.
This is also true.
Yeah, like, genuinely no one. The LA Rams are the only team in LA. Let's move on. Like, seriously. It's adorable. They're going to share that stadium with the Rams. Yeah, great. The Rams will then sell out the stadium, and then the LA Chargers.
I feel you're giving the Rams too much credit for selling out the stadium.
I think they actually will sell out the stadium, because I think the novelty will be there for a little while, at least for the first little bit.
Maybe for a couple of
because
years.
It is a new mega stadium, and apparently it's supposed to be really, really nice. Like, at the very least, people will be like, oh, let me check it out. Here's the thing. There will be some people that will go like, oh, are the Patriots playing here? Oh, cool. Or, are the, or whatever. Insert team du jour.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think it'll be similar to what happened when the Lakers weren't that great a little while ago, where people would still, or better example, the LA Clippers. When the LA Clippers sucked for a long time, they would still draw some fans because they would come to see the other team. So I think there'll still be a little bit of a draw there, especially in a new fancy schmancy mega stadium.
I'll give you that.
So I think that'll be at least a little while. But I think the Chargers just struggle to draw flies. I think they're just not going to. Here's the thing. I think logistically it would be a nightmare, but I have to be honest. I actually think the London Chargers idea would be fantastic. I actually think that they would actually do better in London. Or, better yet, here's a real cool idea. You're going to love this. You ready? Move back to San Diego. You idiots. Like, now, in fairness, I would continue to hold tight if I was San Diego. I'm not giving you a free stadium of any kind. You want a stadium, build it your damn self. But I've been on this bandwagon for everybody. Don't give them money for a stadium. Or, if you're going to give them money for a stadium, charge them rent forever, in perpetuity. You want a stadium? Fine. You don't own it. What about the naming rights? You don't get them. It's my stadium. I'm paying for it. It's mine.
Yeah, fair enough.
That's what I'm saying. These municipalities need to get out of this. They need to start taking a more business-like mentality themselves. It's like, no. You're basically asking for a loan. What am I getting in return? Oh, we make jobs. Oh, cool. I can have a couple of make jobs in the stadium a couple of times a year? Woo! Like, that's garbage.
Yeah.
Oh, you can build around it. I could build around it without the stadium. The stadium costs billions of dollars. I can build a whole bunch of shit there. I could literally just build a sinkhole and then hire construction people to do that. That makes jobs. It's a waste of time, but it makes jobs.
Yeah.
A stadium is like the worst investment a municipality can make. The return on investment is terrible. If you're going to build a stadium for somebody, charge them rent in perpetuity. And if you want it, you have to sign like a 100-year lease, and you're going to pay rent in perpetuity. Because I need the money back from that stadium. I can't build one that I can't use for shit. That's stupid. That's just my general feeling on building stadium municipalities. These guys need to start getting out of it, because if all the municipalities stop paying for it, it forces these owners, like, if you really want a stadium so damn badly, build it your damn self. Also, on a related note, maybe if you started doing this, maybe they would build their own stadiums, and maybe they would build stadiums that were designed to last. Fenway Park still exists. Is it perfect? No. Is it still around? Yes. Wrigley Field? Still around.
Well, and they also make continued improvements to those stadiums, too.
You have to keep retrofitting them. But the point that I'm trying to make is, those stadiums were built with the idea that they weren't going to be obsoleted in 20 years. They were not designed for that. They were designed with the idea, oh no, we'll build the stadium and then you'll do. But I'll give you a good example. I'll give you a different example. We'll go back to football.
All right.
City, I want to say City Park or City Field or whatever.
What team are we talking about?
Whatever the predecessor of Lambeau Field was, there was a different name. It was like City Stadium or City Municipal Stadium or whatever. I forget what the original name was. The point is, before it became Lambeau Field, you had a field there. Lambeau Field is built in the same piece of land that the original stadium was built in. So what you kept doing is you just kept retrofitting and expanding on the original piece of land. Mm-hmm. It's effectively the same stadium. Mind you, obviously, the current day Lambeau Field is way nicer. It's bigger. It's got bigger capacity, all that. It's the same damn stadium.
Yeah.
The core, the baseline, the spot where you built it is the same spot. You didn't find another piece of land a couple of miles away and then build another thing. No, that's the same. So the neighborhood that was built around it is still the same neighborhood. So the point is, Lambeau Field at this point is an institution. So now it's like, it's taken on, in the football context, it's taken on that same feeling, sensation that you have. Who is arguing to tear down Wrigley Field? Who is arguing to tear down Fenway?
The Fenway argument did happen.
Sure.
But there's so much pushback from the community.
Absolutely. But the thing is, here's the thing. If you were the Boston Red Sox and you were right now running another championship team, you could build another stadium somewhere else in Boston. But it wouldn't be the same. And also, you've got the structure and bones. Well, just jack up the ticket prices. That's what they do. But the point is that, and obviously, like, the best example of that was the Green Monster seats. They didn't exist when the stadium was built, and then you added them in. So the point is, you can do little things there. And by the way, the capacity of Fenway Park is still relatively small.
Yeah, especially compared to the MLB average.
Yeah.
It's below average.
But you manage. The point is, you find a way, you make it work. But the point is that...
Well, yeah, they've done a really good job of maximizing their revenues.
Exactly. But the point is that you built that stadium. Those stadiums were built with the notion that they were going to be around for a while. They weren't built with the idea that, hey, you know what's going to happen? In 20 years? Oh, now it's old. Tear it down, build a new one.
Yeah, which is really ridiculous.
It gets really expensive to keep building new stadiums all the time. Like, the next football mega stadium is going to cost like $2 or $3 billion. That's why the
Which is just stupid when you really think about it.
that's why I won't. I promise I won't go too much further down this rabbit hole. But my main point is that's the reason why the whole argument for many years around here was always, oh, what would it take to get to the NFL in Toronto? Like about $6 billion. That's what it would take. Because the problem is, no matter what you do, oh, you can use Rogers. No, you can't use Rogers Center. It won't work. It's not designed properly for that. It just can't do it.
Yeah.
So it was designed for a multi-purpose stadium, which isn't good enough to make that happen. You have to build it. So you have to find a piece of land. You have to build it's going to cost you multi-billions of dollars to build the stadium, and then it's going to cost you multi-billion dollars to get the team, whether it's through buying a different team and bringing it over, a relocation fee or an expansion fee. Either way, nobody can afford that. That's the reason why it doesn't work. Plus, you can't have corporate ownership in the NFL. So, Rogers would have done it already if they could afford to do that, but they can't. They don't have a choice. So that's the problem. Is like it's a bad business model to get into at this stage. Even with all the TV money, if you're already in the NFL, so be it. You're good. You're good to go. You got part of the TV pie. You're solid. But you're not going to build a new stadium. That's why, as long as you can hold a municipality hostage, that's why the Raiders are going to Las Vegas. If you can find a sucker municipality who's willing to shell out money to basically put you up rent free and let you have all the revenue, well, that's a great business deal for you. Dumb as hell for the municipality, but
Agreed 100%.
But I'm off my soapbox. But the whole thing is, I genuinely dislike the whole idea of building a new stadium for a team. I'm like, why? You know what? If you go away, that sucks, but I'll live. I just don't see a value in continuously doing it. That's why it's going to be interesting to me in the long run to see what happens with the Jays and Rogers and everything in the long run, because I don't think you're getting another stadium. Not for a long-ass time, because guess what? We can keep retrofitting the dome. It may not be your optimal choice. It probably shouldn't have been your first choice in the first place when you designed it, but it's the one you got. And I don't see another spot where you can put one.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
That's it for that. All right, cool. I just wanted to have a quick discussion about that. The upshot of this is, honestly, if you could get the NFL team in London, I'd at least give it a shot. Logistically, it would be interesting, but I think it's doable. And it would be kind of cool to have that 9:30 game, though. That'd be kind of funny.
Yeah.
On a regular basis.
I'd be down for it.
Yeah, I kind of enjoy it. All right, so that's good. I'm good with that.
All right.
Got anything
So
left?
what are you looking forward to, Carlos?
Right now, honestly, it's tricky because now I haven't really gotten into the hockey too much yet. I'm going to try to get into it a little bit. Football's weird right now. Without getting into another tangent, my fantasy team sucks. They're average. They're all right, but it's. I think I've put together that team with Scotch tape and used gum.
Well, you do have a lot of injuries too.
Philip Rivers sucks. Speaking of the Chargers, he sucks so bad. He sucks so bad. Oh my god. Anyway, and you know what my backup is now.
No, who is your backup?
Andy Dalton.
Oh gosh.
The fact that I've won any games is incredible. Any weeks is amazing.
That's
Literally duct tape and used gum, Dave.
Hey,
duct tape
for the record, if anyone is paying attention that really cares about fantasy football, it's a 12-team league and Carlos is 6th, which means he is in the playoff position right now.
Considering the fact that's because I have the Patriots defense.
With a 5-4 record, and yes, the only reason he's actually have above 500 record is the Patriots defense.
Yes,
which is a good pickup.
And this week they have a bye week,
so
this team blows so hard. I did the best I could, but all my players got injured. Literally everybody.
And your forecast to lose, you have a 36% chance to win this week, Carlos.
It seemed like a good idea at the time.
With Philip Rivers, who was supposed to get 18.94 points and got 10.7.
He threw a pick six. He sucks so bad. There's your fantasy. There's your fantasy football update. Philip Rivers sucks so bad, so bad.
Yeah.
Oh, this man's garbage. All right. So with that said, I think we've covered everything on your list. Yes. What I'm looking forward to, as I said, is I'm still enjoying the football. Pitiful fantasy aside, no, I'm still enjoying the games. Although last week was kind of garbage. To be honest, it wasn't really any good. Yeah, I don't know, and I'll be honest with you. We'll discuss it more next week, I think, or in future weeks here. I'm still not convinced the Packers are any good. So it's one of those things. In fairness, though, and here's my thought that I will leave everybody with this week. I'm not sure if anybody's any good. And it's kind of, I've kind of said this before, but like I really mean it. Like in fairness, there's components of teams that are really good. I think Lamar Jackson is very good. I think he's playing phenomenally well. I think Russell Wilson's played phenomenally well. I think there are components of teams or segments of teams, like the Patriots defense is very good. So like there are pieces that are good. I just don't think there's one coherently good team on offense and defense with the players. And it's like, I think every team is there for the taking, which means the playoffs are going to be fascinating when we get to it, because it's going to be, I think it's going to be very much rock, paper, scissors. As much as any other year, it's going to be like, no, it doesn't matter how good or bad you are. Who your opponent is going to determine whether you've got a shot or not. Because there's some teams that's like, on paper maybe are worse than you, but no, they can beat you. Because they just have the right set of components.
Yeah.
How about yourself? Anything you look forward to?
Yeah, so football, but a different kind of football. MLS Cup.
Football.
So as mentioned in the Pretentious Cross Country Running Report, the MLS Cup, which is on Sunday, Toronto and Seattle, and then also the CFL playoffs.
Ben could have stuffed you in the trunk, right? He could have just thrown you into a bag, and then you could
money and other things.
Ben could have paid for you. He's a self-indulgent weeder with too much bloody money. Did we not just establish this earlier?
There's that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the CFL playoffs. So
when does that actually start?
This week, Sunday. So you have Edmonton playing Montreal in the Eastern semifinal. Gotta love the crossover teams because Toronto and Ottawa suck so much.
Listen, I often think of Edmonton as an Eastern team. Please continue.
And then in the West, you have Winnipeg at Calgary.
In the game no one cares about. Okay. Sorry, go back to, what was the first one? It was
Edmonton in Montreal.
Okay. And then the winner of that will play Hamilton?
Yes. And the winner of the West semi plays Saskatchewan.
Woo. That's the thing. That is the thing that happens. Yes.
So there you go.
Agreed.
So I'm gonna, and then the Raptors have some. They're on a big road trip right now. So they've got, for example, they played New Orleans tonight. They have the Lakers on Sunday night, and they have I think they play the Clippers. They could play in Dallas. So they play a lot of good teams on the road. So I think there's gonna be a lot of good basketball this coming week too. Hopefully, anyway.
That's fair. I think it'll be interesting to see. Right now, I think the NBA for me is still too early because really, and I've never shied away from this. The NBA only interests me in two areas: playoffs and unnecessary drama, which the NBA has in spades.
There's a lot of the second one there.
Yeah,
Carlos.
that's what I'm saying. But like, it's still percolating, Dave. Like, it's still the unnecessary drama hasn't quite hit critical mass yet. We're getting there.
It will. It will.
Maybe we'll have someone randomly like stab somebody, and then we'll get there. But we'll arrive as time goes on. We're still warming our way into it. That's fair.
All right, that's what I got for you.
All right, good stuff. Well, I think this has been an exciting edition of the Unnecessary Nonsense podcast. We've had some tangents. We've gotten in all our greatest hits. We've gotten in all the standard notes have been hit, and the next time that Ben feels like just spending money and making it rain randomly, I got ideas. Is what I'm trying to say. Like going to Seattle to see a freaking soccer game. Like, for God's sake, douchebag, garbage. Anyway, all right. With all that said, quickly we will do shameless plugs before I mutter more curses under my breath. We are on Instagram at Unnecessary Podcasts, on Twitter at Unnecessary_pod. At some point I may just have to make you in charge of some of these social media because I'm garbage at updating them.
This is fair.
It's really bad. Anyway, our site where you can see archived versions of our previous episodes. And I have noticed a bit of an uptake in some people listening, so maybe some new people are hearing some of this stuff. So it's unnecessarypod.podbean.com. That's where you can check out previous episodes if you want to check out some of our stuff. Occasionally we'll do a little bit more evergreen content, so you can see some stuff that isn't just time sensitive. So that's the thing. And then you can also check us out on YouTube if you look up Unnecessary Nonsense Podcast. The advantage of that is you'll get archived versions of all the episodes with cartoon versions of our faces, which is a gift that keeps on giving, all in and of itself. However, if that's not enough for you, occasionally I will throw in there an Unnecessary Nonsense Podcast extra. There hasn't been one in a little while, but I think as we settle into the playoffs, I may even have a little fun at the CFL's expense. Maybe. I can't promise that I will, but I might. Maybe.
But the people want it, Carlos.
Listen, the only Unnecessary Nonsense podcast extra that people want is they want you doing the proper review of the Cam Newton and Antonio Brown YouTube channels. They need
Give it time.
reaction.
Give it time.
Soon, this desperation and sadness will creep over you. The darkness will hit you, and you'll be done with Twitter and looking at that feed, and you'll want to check out the YouTube channel of Antonio Brown and Cameron Newton, who recently hit 100,000 subscribers and got the plaque.
Ooh.
Oh, yes. Think about that. Just saying. And that's it for us. And that leaves us with this episode of the Unnecessary Nonsense Podcast. We will catch you on the next one. Thank you for listening.